Hello and welcome to today's episode of Authentic Achievements, where it's my very great privilege to be joined by the fabulous Dudley Duncan. Dudley, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here this morning.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. And we were already getting quite stuck into our chat before we got started. So before we do that again, let me share with our audience a little bit more about you. So Dudley Duncan is a USA swimming club coach and has been for over 51 years, albeit you're now retired from the actual coaching, but still part of that business. Been inducted into 4 categories of the Hall of Fame. You're the author of The Art of Swimming and The Game of Racing, to articulate the differences in club coaching from all other levels of coaching. It's just fascinating. I mean, what an amazing journey. And to have coached for 51 years, you must have seen some amazing things during your time. So could you tell us a little bit more about your journey so far, please?
Yeah, well, my journey started when I failed beginner swim lessons.
Really?
Yeah. As a boy, my aunt and uncle brought me to Miami, Florida, where they lived, and enrolled me in a beginner swim class. And at the end of it, I wouldn't swim all the way across the deep end. I'd swim across the shallow, but not the deep. And so the guy did his best to motivate me, but I failed. Eventually, my father died, actually, when I was 11. And so my mom moved to a community that had a swimming pool so that we'd have a place to be in the summers while she was working and we were out of school. So got involved with the pool there and swimming on the team there. And I went to military school in my teens, and they had a swim team there. So I swam in military school. And then I went in the service. I was in the Air Force for 4 years. In my last year, I was placed in security police in the base where I was stationed. And I was investigating a vandalism at a colonel's house on the base. He happened to have 5 kids, and most of them were swimming competitively on the base. So we got to talking, and he said they needed an assistant coach, and I raised my hands and said, I can do it. And so he actually switched me over from Air Force Security Police to Army Special Services.
Oh, wow.
I coached swimming my last year in the service for these club kids. And then I got out and went to college, majored in physical education, and coached also while I was in college, club team. And then I had a graduate assistantship paid for by one of the families, so I could keep coaching for another year after I graduated.
Oh, wow.
And I did that, and then the rest is just, me moving from one place to another until I settled in finally and stayed in Midlothian, Virginia, which is just outside of Richmond, Virginia, until I retired.
Wow. So it really feels like swim coaching was kind of your calling from that very early, not enjoying your first lesson, to it's then become such an active part of your life throughout that journey, hasn't it? Throughout that being in the forces, and then following on from that in running the business. So you must have seen so many things, but I would love, because coaching is one of those things that people, it's like the dark art, isn't it? Everyone's a coach. Nobody really knows what it is. So I'd love to hear from you that kind of difference between club coaching and other levels of coaching, please.
Okay, well, that's a great question. So club coaching in the United States means that you're coaching. My clubs were mostly around 300 kids,
Wow.
aged from 6 to 8. They would come out between 6 and 8 years old, and I'd have them until they graduated from high school at 18. So you're involved with all of those transitions in human growth and development from those ages. The other thing is the endurance factor for club coaching is different, because most other coaching categories are seasonal. So college is seasonal, high school is seasonal, YMCA is seasonal. It's like that pretty much. But club coaching is year round. So you've got those kids all through the year. And then the last thing is the business of club coaching is largely nonprofit 501c3, as we say in the United States tax code. And they're usually run by volunteer parents that form a board of directors, and they control all the decision making about the club. It's divided up a little bit. You're primarily responsible for the swimming elements, but they control everything else with respect to money and how the club operates and, you know, what you do administratively and so forth. So I had been involved with coaches over the years, and I had myself stated, boy, if I could own my own pool and I could do this for myself, I think I could do it better. And ultimately, that did happen. I had, it wasn't a disagreement, but it was a difference in where I thought the direction of the club should go, and the direction that the board of directors thought it should go. And we had a conflict over that. So ultimately, I purchased a pool and started the business for myself and operated the business myself for the rest of the time. So those are my main motivations also for writing the book, is to sort of articulate the differences between club coaching and all other levels.
I love that. I mean, that's quite a leap, though, isn't it? To suddenly go and buy a pool. I mean, I'm just trying to comprehend that. That must have been a big decision. And how did you make that transition? Because all of a sudden now you've gone from being just the coach to actually having to be a business owner as well, and run that, and I guess bring in the clients, the kids that you're going to be able to coach now for the future.
Yeah, so that's the reason that I thought it was important to write about my experience in that way, because I was able to get into this property with no money down because I assumed a loan. And the price of it was $225,000, which seems, for a lot of coaches, they think it's going to be in the millions, but 225,000 was about what a 3-bedroom ranch home would cost in Midlothian at the time I bought it. So, it's a house payment, basically, based on the revenue that you bring in. So it was pretty easy to get into it. I needed a lawyer to incorporate. I needed an accountant because I really didn't have time to do the accounting, even if I was skilled at it, which I'm not. So I had those two careers that people helped me with. And so from then on, it was just really a question of whether I was willing to do the work necessary to operate the pool and operate the business and coach the team. And I would say that was a bit of a challenge in the first years. But by and by, hired more people, the programs grew. And then finally, the rezoning was key. This was a pool that I bought that was a homeowners association pool, and the community had gotten older and they didn't want to keep the pool up anymore, so they wanted to sell it. So I bought it, and they I guess the thing that was important about that is that I just kept doing the work, the day-to-day work, and things kind of worked out. But when I rezoned it from residential to commercial, the value of the property changed from the appraised value at $468,000 as a residential to $2.62 million as a commercial.
Wow.
Yeah, so that enabled us to get the loan to build another pool on the property specifically for teaching lessons, swim lessons. And now that business is approaching $3 million business. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing journey. And I love that, as you shared so eloquently, it was about consistently doing the work, wasn't it? And also bringing in the people, the lawyer and the accountant that needed to do the things that you couldn't do. Because I think often, as entrepreneurs, when they think about setting up, they try and do everything themselves, even if actually they don't have the knowledge or the skill or the time to do those things themselves. And yet, as you found, actually making sure that you've brought the right people on at the right time, and then you focus on doing the work and doing it consistently, then that's how the business grew. And I mean, what a journey to go from that initial investment in what you were thinking of doing, of that 225,000, and it all being on a loan. So all being on that risk of believing in yourself that you can do that, to now having a business these many years later that's approaching 3 million. I mean, that's amazing. You must be really proud of the journey that you've been on.
Yeah, I'm really happy about it. And I've sort of given the business over, the operations of the business, to two fellas that were with me along the way. So they get to benefit from that and grow it. And they are growing it. They're doing a much better job than I did, to be honest with you. So that's gratifying. It worked out well.
Oh, I love that. And having been involved with so many children for such a long period of their life, you must have also some really proud moments of seeing what they've achieved with your help and support. Are there any that really stand out?
Yeah. So, I mean, you get them when they're just beginning to swim. And I've had two that have been all the way through the program and have made it to Olympic Games. So, that's prideful, to be honest. But there are, everybody really is working on the basis of their own potential and their own talent. So, it's just as gratifying too to see anybody reach their potential and what they do, and especially if they're successful when they stop swimming. And a lot of those characteristics carry over into their personal lives as adults. That's good.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, you're teaching them those skills that are transferable for life, aren't they? About keep going and trying and constantly improving yourself. I say to my little girl all of the time, our goal in life is always to be a better version of ourselves today than yesterday. And that's all we can be in control of, is being the best version of us, because we've got different skills and abilities to everybody else. There's no point comparing yourself with them, because you're not them. You're somebody different, but we can still fulfill our full potential and kind of keep going. And that must be really lovely to kind of see and be part of. And I know obviously you've then gone on and you've got got your book, so The Art of Swimming and the Game of Racing. What is it that makes that important to read?
Well, I guess going backwards, the chapter about the main chapter about the business is later in the book, but that is one element that I wanted younger coaches to have for information for their own purposes. I was just like all the rest of coaches. I thought, well, it costs too much. I don't make enough money to be able to afford to buy a pool property, let alone operate it and that, but I bought my first house in the same area when I was 30. And that house cost $49,900. And so if I'd have known what I know now when I was in my early 30s, I could have done it for $50,000 instead of $250,000. So, young coaches that are coming along now could read that and maybe have confidence to pursue it and do it. If they're inclined to do the work, I do make that point. You can't be afraid of the work, because it's going to be there until you get to a point where you can share it with others.
Yeah.
And then the other part is there's always been a debate in swim coaching, in particular, probably in other sports as well, about how much to do, how much speed work, how much endurance work, how many practices should you do, or how few, So, I mean, people are going back and forth in this debate all the time. And I think the debate isn't categorized according to the different levels of coaching. So you would have clinics, and a college coach would be up there telling you what they did. And I would be thinking in the audience, well, it doesn't really apply to me, because, I'm doing a whole different realm of coaching than that. Typically in college and YMCA and high school, they're limited to 3 events in a meet. And a swim meet typically takes 2 to 3 hours, including diving. So that's really, not the same physical need for the elements of physiology that are necessary for club coaching. You will do meets in club coaching that will vary in length from 2.5 or 3 days up to 8 or 9 days if you're at Olympic trials. When I was first coaching, Olympic trials were 8 days, and now they're 9 days because they've added semifinals into Olympic trials. So, yeah, it's a whole different realm of physiology necessary for those kids. And the other part of it is that studies show that aerobic capacity is best developed between ages of 14 and 17, roughly. So that's when you have them as a coach. So that, that's a responsibility, I think, of a club coach that oftentimes is not considered when people are telling you how to coach. So I put all those elements into the book. The book also focuses on the mental game and what's necessary on that, on deliberate practice and how you go about goal setting, and then using your goal setting to kind of map out the trip or the journey, as you say, the journey from where you are to where you want to be. So all of that's in there. It's fairly in depth, but it's also written from a pragmatic point of view, because I was a coach. There are books that are written by physiologists and scientists and that are maybe a little bit harder to read. So, I wanted to put out a book that could be a practical guide for other coaches, and especially younger coaches.
Yeah, I love that. And I was about to say, but you pulled it just in there when you were saying about the physiological differences of 2 or 3 hours to like 8 or 9 days. I was thinking, wow, it must also have such a massive psychological challenge on you as well, and that having to get you in the right mindset as well as the right physical shape to be able to compete across 9 days. I mean, that has slightly blown my mind trying to think about how you would do that. And I guess the book, therefore, is transferable across not just coaching in the swimming environment, but actually you've talked about that importance of setting the goal, of having a plan, of working towards that goal, of knowing where that goes, which translates, doesn't it, in any goal that you are looking to set for yourself, and then needing to go through the process of achieving that goal. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it's definitely fair. There are so many mental aspects to it. The first girl that I had, this is a story, but it's pointed toward this subject, is the first girl I had coached that made the Olympic team was in that endurance phase of the training prior to coming down into the quality phase or the speed phase. And we were doing something pretty hard, and I was pushing her pretty good. And she stopped on, it was a break on the interval. And she looked at me with this intense, almost hatred, and said, "I better make this Olympic team." We were toward the end of the practice, and I go, "Okay." I stopped the practice. I go, "Let's sit down and talk about this a minute." So we did. And I said, "Whitney, you can't think like that. If you really think that you have to make it or that it's not worth it, if you don't make it, those kinds of thoughts will affect you at the trials and they'll consume your thinking. So you need to let that go. If you make it, you make it. And that's good that you had the opportunity to try. Most people don't. But you gotta deal with it. You gotta say, well, it's okay. So we go to Olympic trials now. We've been through all the training. We go to Olympic trials, and we thought our best shot was in the 200 freestyle, 200 meter freestyle. And it was the second day. So she was swimming 5 events in 5 days, 5 consecutive days in that trials. She swam the 100 free on the first day, and we were just swimming that to try to make a relay, which she didn't make. She said that's the first time she'd ever been that nervous. She was about to throw up before, so she was okay with that. The second day was the 200 meter freestyle, what we thought was her best shot. And she didn't make it. She placed third, and you have to place in the top 2. They didn't have an 800 meter freestyle relay at the time, which is each of the 4 swimmers swimming 200. So they didn't have that relay at that time. She didn't make it. Man, I was pretty worried about going over to the swim down pool after she was done. But I went over and she goes, almost, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
She swam 400 meter free on the next day. Didn't make the final. She was 10th in that, I think. And then she swam 100 fly on the next day, butterfly. And she was 5th. So didn't make it, but pretty good swim though. And then on the last day, she swam the 200 IM, which is individual medley. That means you're swimming each of the 4 strokes in a specific order. And after the prelims, she placed 9th. So she wouldn't have made the final, except that the one who placed first had also placed first that day in the 50 free. She scratched the 200 IM, and Whitney got in 8th. So she's in lane 8 and swims in the final, and she gets 2nd. She made the team. So, I think had we not had that conversation that day, that there would have been the possibility that she wouldn't have made the team on the last day in the 200 IM, which we weren't forecasting, for her to make that. So, yeah, things work out pretty interesting.
Oh, I love that. I love that it just demonstrates that when we keep trying, when we have the right mindset, to your point, if you're going to get yourself that mindset that if I don't get it, everything was worth nothing. And it's it wasn't, because you learned things as you went, you developed, you became better at what you were doing, even if you don't get there the first time, because we're still growing and evolving. But if we have the wrong thinking, then we can undermine everything else we've done, can't we? We can make all of it actually dissipate because we didn't think in the right way to enable us to see the beauty of what we were learning and what was going to come next from it. And I love that on the last day, when everything else, the thing you didn't think, neither of you thought was going to be the thing that got her through. What an amazing story. That must have been quite a moment. I bet going to the pool following that part was an easier walk.
Oh, yeah. You have that clip on your website where you're giving a speech, and it's about hope and fear.
Yeah.
And making the choice of thinking one way or the other. And it reminded me, because something I had always said to kids from the beginning was, think about what you want, not what you don't want. Because if you think about, what if I don't do it? Or what if something happens in the race? Or, what if I trip or hurt myself or something, mess up a turn? You can go on and think about the things that you don't want to happen. And next thing you know, you can't even remember how to swim. Your mind is full.
Yeah.
But if you think about what you want, and you just think, okay, I've done this a lot of times and I can do it. It's just keep your mind on what you want. You got a much better shot.
I love that. It's so true. I work with so many people where they're really clear on what they don't want, and they set their goals in the negative. I don't want to not have any sales. I don't want to have cash flow problems. I don't want to get old. I don't want to do all these things. But what do you want? Because if you're not careful, our mind is a bit like the sat nav of our life, isn't it? So where we point it is where it goes. If we're pointing at what we don't want, that's what we'll get, because it will take us there, won't it? It doesn't understand that the word no, really.
Yeah, it's a simple concept of thinking, really, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, that often is the challenge, isn't it? The things that are simple aren't easy, and therefore often we don't do them, even though we know we should. So how did you change the business paradigm for yourself? I mean, you've shown us how you've changed people's thinking, how you've been able to help them develop, but then taking all that you knew and then creating a lasting business with a legacy. You're now handing that on to people that worked for you. How did you change all of that?
Minute by minute, I would say. I read a book a long time ago called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, I think was the author. Tolle, I think. And that book really changed me in a way, because it was something I kind of did, but I didn't know if I was doing it or not, but this really helped me to make a commitment to being in the moment I'm in, and not trying to think about, what's going to happen next or that. I do from a planning standpoint, but as I live, I'm pretty much in the moment, I think. And I really needed to be when I started the business myself, because the amount of work and the time it took in the first year, especially before I got any help, I really, to be honest with you, I couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it. And I did do it somehow, I think, because other people were patient with me or whatever. I managed, and then in the second year I hired a guy and he helped, and that was amazing how much help that was, just to have one other person. And then, pretty soon we got more people in the program and the revenues got better. And, I did one element is when I was working in that first year by myself, I didn't pay myself, because I had started another business a few years before, what we call pool management. And I did that with a partner. And so in that first year, I paid myself from that other business, and there just wasn't enough revenue to make it work, with me taking a salary or something like that. So I was able to do that because I'd started that other business. And by the way, my son runs that other business now. He owns it. So, yeah. So that was helpful to me to have done that. But even doing that, I did it with a partner who did all the work, and all I did was invest in it, So, yeah, it worked out. And when I had between the time where I resigned from the club that I had the disagreement with, that's a strong word. It wasn't really a disagreement. It's just a difference in thinking about the club. So I had 3 years between that time that I resigned and the time that I bought the pool. So I was able to work in that other business that I'd started for 3 years before I bought this property. And it's also how I found the property. I came in contact with these people that wanted to sell. So I bought.
I love that. I mean, life always, it always makes more sense in the rearview mirror, doesn't it? At the time, sometimes it can feel a little bit like, why is this happening? Why are we getting there? But serendipity often kicks in, and you realize that led to this, that led to that got the ball rolling. But then how you keep the ball rolling, as you've so eloquently shared with us in today's episode, is in what we do consistently. It's in what we think by focusing on where we're going to head to, and in then taking the action and doing the hard work, doing the bits that aren't easy. You've shared so much, Dudley. It's been fascinating. But could I ask you, if you could go back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say to believe in yourself. I think the only reason I didn't do what I did when I was 56 when I bought this pool. So I was late in my career, really. Sort of. But when I was younger, I really felt like my career and what happened to me depended on other people. And looking back, I think that was never really the truth. It depended on me, but I wasn't confident enough to, take the steps that I needed to take if I wanted to do certain things. So, I would say if I had to look back and do something different with myself, I would have made the decision. If I could have read my book when I was 30, then I probably would have done it, so, yeah.
I love that. And it's such great advice. And it sounds like the book is packed full of great advice. I can't wait to read a copy. But just before we go, how can people get in touch with you, and how do they get hold of a copy?
Okay, so the book is sold on Amazon. I think it's $19.99 or something on Amazon. And you can get it in Kindle, or you can get it in printed form. And there's also an audiobook, and I narrated the audiobook as well. And then I have a website, which is dudleyduncan.com. You can go to that website and you can purchase and get an inscribed copy on the website. And the audiobook is also on the website too. So you can get that if you prefer that. My son told me, Dad, do an audiobook because I'll never read it. So that's why I did it. So, and then our business is Quest Swimming. So if you go to questswimming.com, you can learn a lot about, what the campus is now and the history of it and that kind of thing. My email is dudleyduncan01@gmail.com. And I think you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn as well.
Amazing. I love that you've done an audiobook, because I'll be honest, I try and read a book every day, but now I have to admit, sometimes I don't read, I listen, because then I can double it up with the dog walk, which means I don't allow myself not to do it.
Yeah.
There's no excuse. You've got to walk the dog. You can listen to a book at the same time. So it will be one I'll be listening to really soon. And we'll make sure all the ways that people can connect with you are in the notes below. But Dudley, thank you so very much for coming on, sharing your story, sharing your insight and your advice for us to really listen to what's important, to be present in the now, and to focus on what we do want. It's been an absolute delight. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It's really a great pleasure, and hope to talk to you again.
Me too. And for everybody listening and watching, I hope you found it equally as insightful and inspiring as I did. And until next time, take care.